Well, good morning, everybody. I'm up in Leeds this morning, and it is a very miserable, grey, wet, windy morning on the 12th of June. So that's not going to put me down. I'm going to bring some sunshine into your lives this morning, everyone, because we've got some really good news about where accountants are going, some very positive feedback. We've all been through a very torrid time the last 9 weeks or so, and I'm really pleased this morning that Tariq, good morning, Tariq.
Good morning, Gordon.
Yes,
very happy to
have
be
Tariq with us this morning. Tariq, you've been dealing with accountants for almost as long as I have. I think you say in your notes there.
I'm a bit younger than you, Gordon.
Yes, okay. You've been a partner. When did you become a partner at McIntyre Hudson?
Okay, so I was there in that was 4 years ago now. Gosh, time travels. Time moves very, very fast. So I was there, and then I came to Global Emphasis in 2018. So I've
right.
been
Okay.
For a couple of years now.
Now, I'm not going to. There's no hidden agenda here, Tariq. You've got this business that you're involved with called Global Emphasis, which is involved with outsourcing. So, how many accountancy firms are you talking to within your Global Emphasis, with your Global Emphasis hat on, and helping them with their issues?
So we've got. We work with sort of about 400 firms, really, on and off, throughout the year. Some of it's resource seasonal, but I would say, on a very active basis, around about 150 firms. And so I'm typically involved with, all sorts of sizes of firms, and my account managers bring me in as and when needed. But obviously over the past few months, we've been very, very busy.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm really pleased to have Tariq with us, because he's talking to firms all the time, and I just think it's useful to get other people's perspective as to what they think, what you think's going on. We've got nearly 100 folk with us today. I'm in charge of the keyboards today, so that's a little bit about you, Tariq. Let's just go into the agenda straight away and have a good chat about what's going on out there. First of all, I'd like to, if I may, just look forward for a minute and reflect strategically what's been going on and where the tide is already changing. And I have to say, as you'll see in a positive way, that the smaller independent accounting firms, brackets hopefully 2020 members, are able to implement a rapid response client care program, which is exactly what this situation demands and demanded, and still does demand. It's just not so rapid right now. It seems to be settling down. And I'm going to compare that with firms that have not been able to implement rapid response and are losing some battleground to 2020 members who are actually growing. And I'm sure Tariq, how about you guys? I know we're going to have some overlap with some of our customers. Are you sensing that some of your guys are growing through this period, or is it a stable ship?
I think, obviously we've seen firms, particularly the smaller firms, one or two of them have actually even shut up shop for a couple of months because they simply weren't ready for any of this. But I think growth, not really. Changing working habits, yes. So certainly our expectation that, we felt we're sort of 3 tiers down. You've got the client, you've got the obviously yourselves, the accounting firms, and then you have us sort of in the background supporting accounting firms. So we're often the last to hear, what's actually going on in the marketplace in terms of the client end. But what we've seen is a significant move towards sort of dedicated resourcing. So having 100% of somebody working and supporting firms. So I think I don't know whether that's a growth thing or it's more right sizing and adjusting working habits and having that comfort around.
Well, let's come back. I think we should come back to that as a specific point in a second, because it's very relevant. Just for the purpose of completeness, then, chaps and ladies, working virtually, not entirely for some firms. I think there's going to be a hybrid, but the big issue is this idea of new habits, as Tariq was saying, moving forward, some of which will stick, some of which we might go back to where we were, most of which I think will be a hybrid. And these are the sorts of issues that I wanted to cover off today, primarily because if you build loyalty, you will be rewarded. And that's the basic premise. So if you build some team loyalty, with not just for yourself, but also for your team members, that'll come back in spades. And similarly with clients, which touches, again, full circle of what Tariq was talking about in terms of having people around to take care of clients. More people are saying, well, if we're going to start going out selling and prospecting, doing that virtually is going to be somewhat challenging. If you can't actually meet someone and shake their hand and eyeball them, what's plan B? So we're looking at that, and we've looked at it. We're looking at technology as very much using the tools out there that will help us build our business and work closely and, as I say, build team loyalty and client loyalty and get things done. So let me just show you this next slide. I think I'm about to... Oh, bless me. Gosh, a big sneeze there. Okay, so we're looking forward now. We've done the mobilization of the army back to their various homes. Some firms have primarily said we didn't have too much of a problem because by luck or by judgment, we were relatively advanced with our technology and cloud accounting and having hosted desktop solutions and or had our own servers, but people could use them and access them virtually. And even those firms that were a little bit behind that curve, all of a sudden they rushed in, and we were able to, because accountants are smart people, we sorted it out. And so we got into that phase of saying, okay, well, mobilization's been done. We've now got most of our army working from home. And now there's a little bit of, well, are we coming out of lockdown and are we emerging and are we going to go back? And nobody seems to actually know because it's a whole new thing. So whether we emerge gradually and don't go back to lockdown, or whether we emerge a little bit and then sort of take it one step back and 2 steps forward, my guess is really as good as yours. But I do listen to the managing partners within 2020, and some of you, I'm pleased to see, are listening this morning, and it's nice to see you there. Most firms who are doing okay are talking about bringing some people back to the office, but not all of them, because it's just impossible to do social distancing. And then one firm I was speaking to yesterday has got a Monday, half the team come in, or not quite half the team. Tuesday, another team comes in, and so they alternate. And then there's a little force of people that will not come in at all because they're very happy to work from home consistently. Now, there's no right or wrong about this, but I just wanted to make that point that I think you need to prepare yourself a little bit for each section there has got its own mini plan that requires thinking through. Tariq, you were saying, for example, changing subject, but not entirely, we talk about planning and looking forward. Your sense was there might be a little bit of a change in the air come September, October, because people were beginning to feel the pinch of the recession post-summer. So is that what you're feeling, or is that what's your thoughts? Oh, I think we may have lost Tariq. Gosh, technology and all that.
Here I am. I'm back again. It wasn't technology.
Did you press the mute button, Tariq?
Yeah, as I was saying, I mean, I think the initial period, the government incentives, I think have been fantastic. To be honest with you, they've been very, very helpful, and they've given people a lot of hope. But we are in a recession, and I think it's been sweetened by the incentives. But obviously, reality is going to kick in sort of September, October, as those incentives are lifted. And the reality of what's out there really comes on people. With 25% of the workforce effectively furloughed, plus those that are unemployed, they're not all going to be coming back to work, I don't think. And I think we will see, significant impact, which will inevitably roll on to our clients and subsequently accounting firms, and then potentially firms like GI as well, for that matter. So I think we will get hit. I read a statistic a while ago saying that accounting firms don't feel the pinch of recession until 6 months after it's happened. So if assuming that March is when it started, then September's about right, isn't it?
Well, we'll see. I think we're reading all sorts of articles. I'll probably take a slight issue with you there. I'm not sure it will come through in September. It will for some firms. So now, we touched on this before we went live, Tariq, and I think it's probably worth sharing with the group. The firms that seem to be doing better are those firms that have been able to do some sort of rapid response in line with what was very much needed at the time of when it all kicked off. People put client contact programs into place. They asked people to ring clients. So I'd say, look, Tariq, can you give John a call, check he's okay? Tariq would ring, say, Gordon's asked me to give you a call because he wants to know that you're okay. And do you want to schedule up a telephone call to talk through things? Those sorts of things were making a huge difference, making clients feel very loved, a bit of reassurance, a bit of support. People wanted to know about furloughing and bounce back loans and self-employed interruption scheme. They wanted to know all of that stuff. And 2020 members, not wishing to keep harping on about it, but we were able to provide all of that stuff within 24 hours by and large. So the clientresources.co.uk website is a free website, guys, to remind you, for 2020 members. You just got to hook it up to your website, call it Client Resources, and right now it's full of COVID support. It's daily updates, so it's reflected glory for you, and your clients could hardly say anything. Also note, I don't know if I can, oh yeah, it's too complicated right now for me, my little brain. But if you go to the 2020 website under the C19 support tab, you will see on the left, down the left-hand side, a blue button called Archive. Now, the reason that is there is because, say, on the 19th of March, when you advised a client to do something, at the 19th of March, that was the best knowledge that those were the rules at that time. And as we now all know, the rules have changed quite considerably, sometimes on a daily basis, but certainly on a weekly basis. So you need a record of what information and what was best practice and advice as at the time you advised your clients, just to cover yourself, unless a client said, you told me to do that and now look what's happened. Because one of my predictions is that there will be some accountability. So the revenue will come back and say, you furloughed, you took 70,000, you took 100,000, you took 500,000 under furlough. Talk to me. Show me that your business declined. Show me that you were justified in your claim. And I am not entirely convinced, and I'm sure most of you listening are very familiar, that this is fraught with potential for fraud. So people can make a claim for furlough and not even tell employees that they have been furloughed. My daughter works for a very large construction company. They furloughed half the team and then they've dumped on her twice the workload. Now that's not illegal, but it's not the spirit of the occasion. So there's a lot of things, I think, accountability, where ask your tax fee protection people what the story is, please. Are you covered? And if you're not, then ask the question, when and how will it become covered? I spoke with our partners, PFP, on this subject 2 or 3 weeks ago. And Kevin Igo, being an honest chap, said, look, we don't know what to cover because the rules are not clear. So we can't cover something we don't know. But that, I think, is changing. And I will be making inquiries of PFP personally to see if he is able to bring in something to make sure that your clients are covered for any advice that may go, under a revenue inquiry and stuff like that. Coming back to the other thing that Tariq was saying, the firms that would seem to be doing best are those that are putting the clients first. This was my main point. But it's now becoming clear to me, and to clearly a number of 2020 members, that there are firms out there, particularly larger firms, who have not put the clients first, or don't appear to have put the clients first. They have put themselves first. So they have furloughed way too many people. So they are not able to take care of their clients because they simply don't have the resources on board, the sheer number, if you will, the fee earner client ratio needs to hit a certain level for accounting firms or any other firm for that matter to take care of their customers. Now that has not happened with, I say typically, because it's not always the case, with larger firms. So strong regional firms, top 10 national firms have been over furloughing because, and it's the output I'm interested in, we now know clients are beating a path to some 2020 members' doors because they are not being taken care of by their own accountant. They are not getting reassurance and support. There is no rapid response. There is nothing out there to give them any sort of service. And so they are moving to smaller 2020 firms who have got a reputation for being very rapid with their response. And I heard only yesterday, to support this, telemarketing is a winning. So if you go to Companies House and use that software Tracker or Fame or whatever one you use, and get a list of owner-managed businesses, i.e. non-subsidiaries, in your postcode, doing more than, say, 2 million, whatever and if you don't know what the turnover is, guesstimate the net assets on the balance sheet, and start writing to them or phoning them, because, and audited by the Big 10, by the way, not the Big 4, forget them. They're doing a sterling job in their world, absolutely stunning. It's the SME facing top 10 firms that I think are, they'll be fine. They'll come out licking their wounds, I suspect, but they'll be just fine. But they'll definitely be losing a few clients because they have not been able to respond. So that's one of my predictions. I'm going to take issue with Tariq about the insolvency in September. You may well be right, of course, Tariq. But my guesstimate is that it's going to be it'll be spring next year when people can't afford to pay the tax, and HMRC, this will be really determined by HMRC's attitude to time to pay. So if the revenue say, look, I can see that you haven't paid your July 2020 tax bill, which is fine, because we said that would be okay. But we wanted it in the end of January with your January 2021 tax bill, and then you ring and say, well, I haven't got the money. They might say, oh, look, let's make a plan and be accommodating, but they might be a bit more difficult to deal with, and I don't know. So if you haven't got a friendly insolvency practitioner, you probably want to go and find one now. Consumer are 2020's pals in this space, and if you wanted to get a contact with a consumer, then just let me know or the office and we'll put you in touch. Now, the other huge thing that is coming up is, because I'm old enough to see, let me just remind myself if I've got any. There we are. There's the visuals there. Look how old Tariq is and compared to me. You see, now look at that. So Tariq, how many recessions have you actually been through in your business world?
Oh dear. I think well, we had the early 90s. I think was the early 90s probably the first one that I really felt, and then of course 2008 we've had a couple of blips in between. So I've only really seen a couple.
This is the third one.
This will be the third one, yeah.
This will be your third one. Okay, well, I think we'll go with that. And I'm going to say something similar, you know. And most of us listening will say, yeah, something like that. 3 or maybe 4. Now, one of the things that comes out of every single recession so far, and it's fairly obvious when I say it, and that is there will be a lot of business startups. Now, so if the pinch is coming in September, as Tariq is suggesting, then the business startups will be starting in September, October. So if you've got that new business kit that we make available, you might want to get the dust off that, metaphorically speaking, and start putting that out as, if you're thinking of starting a new business, look no further. We've got the new business kit. Go down to your local banks, and I know they're difficult to get hold of, but again, this is all digital nowadays. But if you've got anyone opening up business bank accounts, send them our new business kit with our compliments, because it's a great marketing tool. And when you look at it, for those of you who haven't looked at it, it's a 90 or even 100 pages, most of which is anxiety-provoking stuff, like registering with VAT and getting company and limited companies and LLPs and partnerships and all the different types of vehicles for doing business and registering here and there. And you think, I can't do that, but the accountant, of course, can, and that's the point. see, what you need is an accountant if you're going to do a business startup, and then of course you can talk about cloud accounting, and QuickBooks Online particularly are focusing on smaller businesses, so you might want to make a little bit of a fuss about QBO, even though some of you I know are very keen on Xero. In this particular space, you might say for a business startup, probably QBO for startups is ideal. I don't think anyone's going to fall out with you if you say, no, we rather have Xero on board. But the one that's the cheapest and written by accountants for accountants, of course, is Capium, C-A-P-I-U-M. I'll send you the details. Of course, my pen's not working now. That's sod's law, isn't it? Hang on a second. Yeah, here we go. New pen. Write that down. Capium. Now, Tariq, because you are in your space where you are, you must see all of the software: Xero, QBO, Sage, Sage 950, Sage Online, Capium. Do you have a position? I mean, you must see them all. You must get all sorts coming rushing in.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we're working with accounting firms, so we're very much led by their preference if they have one. So if it's a case where there actually isn't a preference, then we typically tend to use, for the smaller clients, Xero. I mean, it's fairly simple and straightforward, but we do use QuickBooks as well. But like I said, it's very much led by the clients. I just want to sort of come back to one point you were making earlier on about these new businesses starting up potentially September, October time. I mean, it's a great opportunity, I think, for firms to introduce all of this cloud technology. A lot of firms are struggling with it and struggling getting their clients on side for it. So, you know, not to say anything negative about people obviously losing their businesses and going into insolvency, but it also provides an opportunity to take your practice forward and bring it into the 21st century, which a lot of firms, traditional firms, are struggling with. So I think now's a great time, whilst business is a little bit on a downturn, is to really invest in maybe some of the staff that you furloughed to get training in those areas, because it's a great opportunity to transform.
Absolutely. Migrating to the cloud for yourself, use the summer. If you can find the time to migrate your whole firm to the cloud, it's got to be a step in the right direction. I agree with you. One managing partner told me this little story to a group of other managing partners. We've now met 3 weeks later, and the feedback from the other managing partners who hadn't thought of it said, my goodness me, that was a real winner, and I'll just share it with you. So he rings up the he rings up the clients who are not on the cloud. So yes, ideally he would like all his clients on the cloud and monthly direct debits and make my business far more resilient. That's still got to be a target, because it makes your business far stronger and resilient if you get monthly DDs and everyone's on the cloud. So he rings them up and he says, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I am not going to be taking any of your grubby C19 receipts and expenses anymore, and bank statements. I mean, sod that for a game of soldiers. It's just not happening. So we're going to have to put you onto the cloud, and I think you should go on, and then you can choose the software that you think is appropriate. So whether it's QuickBooks or Xero or Sage, it's obviously all cool. As I say, Capium is, if you haven't looked at Capium, surprise yourself. Surprise yourself. Tariq, have you looked at Capium, by the way?
I haven't come across it, but no doubt we have as a firm, but I haven't come across it.
Right.
I'd like to get some information on it, Gordon. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll send you that. Anyway, so the conversation happens with the client, and then they use Team Viewer. That's an option that you might want to look at. Now, Team Viewer is a piece of kit. You probably used it over the years where your laptop broke down or your computer broke down at home or at the office, and then you rang your IT support chaps, and then they said, well, go to this website link and effectively pass control of your computer over to this IT person sitting in the depths of some other county or even country, and then they fix your computer remotely. It's called Team Viewer. So this guy said, look, if you're, say for example, there's Sage 950 version 12, so about 14 years out of date, and it's not unusual. Give me access to your computer. I'll export a CSV file so we can knock out the accounts for this year. So we don't want that to be delayed. And whilst I'm doing it, I'm going to set you up with QuickBooks Online and install receipt bank and bank feeds, and so the whole process. And then you introduce another little concept which I love called practice ignition, so we can onboard you with a monthly direct debit. That conversation, the managing partner said, I had 100% success rate. Not a single client said you can sod off. They were not going to fall out with the accountant. So these other managing partners, there would be about 8 in that particular group. They all scribbled it down. So that's a super idea. And then they came back 3 or 4 weeks later and said, we tried that. Now, I can't say, none of them said 100%, but they said that was a real winner. So if you want to migrate your clients to the cloud through the summer so that you are good to go in the autumn, I would suggest that's a very cunning short-term plan, so that most of your clients are paying you monthly direct debits on the cloud platform. Tariq, excuse me, what sort of percentage of your firms have got their clients on the cloud now? Do you have some feeling for that?
I think yes, in terms of the whole practice management, using things like Practice Ignition or such like, very few in reality. I would say it's a small percentage. They're using cloud-based bookkeeping type technology. I mean, obviously, most of them are. So
yeah,
is the reality. But we do a lot of work with firms on their own systems as well. So we set up a VPN. We go into the client's server and access, their version of Iris, CCH, or whatever it might be, and do year-end accounts on those sort of systems as well. So quite often for the practice and the statutory sort of accounts preparation, tends to still be on premise, but the bookkeeping, I think, very much, I would say 90% are probably in the cloud.
Right.
Management accounts.
Well, that makes sense then, because by far the biggest area. Oh, before I move on, the other thing I wanted to mention was, it won't again surprise anyone listening this morning, but once this is sorted out, there will be a very, very high tax regime, because this has all got to be paid back.
Yeah.
So I think everyone acknowledges that is going to happen. And there are a couple of consequences for that. If you believe that, as I do, if I were running an accounting firm, 2 things spring to mind. First of all, I need to go and hire some tax people who are going to be able to deal with proper tax planning. So I'm not talking about tax people who can fill in tax returns. I can give that to people like Tariq and say, look, dude, I've got 4,000 clients that need tax returns. Can you please take care of that? Looking forward. Because I'm going to have clients that are going to say, I just made £2 million profit and I'm going to make £4 million next year. And you think, well, hang on a minute, there's 2 things happening. One is next year the tax rate's going to be twice as high as it is this year. So what are we doing about that? What if you've got some wealth and you want to pass it down to the grandchildren or the children? Do you do it now, or do you wait for a high tax regime? So these are the obvious points that are coming out. One is internal. How are we going to improve our capabilities, retooling and retraining and reskilling for a higher tax regime? And the second one is externally with our clients. How are we positioning and being proactive with our clients to say, we are anticipating, I'm sure you are, a higher tax regime, maybe as early as next year. And what does that mean for you? And shall we have a chat about? So this is wealth management and tax, personal tax, corporation tax, which then brings in the third element, which is Brexit. Now, some of you will know, look at my watch here, we're still 12 June. That seems to be right, 12 June. On the 30th of June, if I've been told correctly, unless Brexit has all been pre-agreed and pre-negotiated, the default will fall to the World Trading Contracts Agreements and something like that. And that will take effect on the 31st of December. Now, accepted that if both parties agree, any deal can be changed. But if both parties can't agree, the default will be a hard exit, which on the 30th of June is effectively the date when that's been agreed. So from the 1st of July, you may well have a situation where a client entering a high tax regime in the UK with a question mark about which tax regime in Europe does he want to do business with. Does he set up in Ireland? because corporation tax is at 12%, or will it go to 20%? What about the UK, currently 22 or something like that? That goes up to 40%. Or do we put just 3p on the pound and make it 25%? All these questions. Now, I don't have a crystal ball any more than you do, but I do have a little bit of a, now hang on a minute. Should I be saying to my client, look, just in case, why don't you set up a subsidiary or some vehicle in Ireland, and 2020, if that's the case, we've got our go-to chap in Ireland who will set you up either directly or indirectly with a vehicle that allows you to invoice literally tomorrow if you needed to from Europe into Europe, with the European tax rates that may or may not be higher or lower than the UK. So there's all sorts of variables out there. Tariq, in your discussions with your clients, has this been coming through as any serious discussion, or is it just a sort of a notional general pointing in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think throughout the Brexit sort of discussions, having the thought of having something in the EU as it will be after the UK leaves has always been there, and Ireland's always been sort of the obvious choice of jurisdiction, it seems. So that's certainly come up. I haven't had any recent conversations where people have said, combined with COVID-19, if you haven't done it now, you better get on with it. So we haven't had really that conversation. But I hear, everything you're saying. It makes perfect sense, particularly for rapid online businesses and such like. I mean, it's the sort of thing that you can almost do without too much investment as well. I mean, it's exactly a very straightforward thing.
So there are just some sort of strategic thoughts. Point 4 is, once we know whether or not we're going to emerge with or without another lockdown, my guess is as good as anyone's, we will, once that's been released, however it is, the general consensus of opinion is there will then be a surge of activities. So all the things that you put on the back burner, we'll do that when we get back to the office, we'll do. If you can hold off, like maybe a corporate finance arrangement, say, right, now that we're all back, let's get that thing sorted. And there's a general consensus that there will be a surge of activity. Now, this is best example, the anecdotal evidence that this is not just my thinking, but as the thinking of some of the best brains in the business world, would be to share with you the story of PwC, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and KPMG, because they're all following fairly similar, if not exactly the same path. And it goes something like this. 8 or 9 weeks ago, the message went out to the troops internally, now don't you worry about anything. If there's going to be a hit, the partners will take the hit, everything's going to be fine. So they tried to calm down and give some reassurance with a degree of fearfulness that the market may not go in our favor. 4 weeks ago, if not 5 weeks ago, the tone changed to, actually, on reflection, chaps, I think we're going to do rather well out of this. So much so, we've decided that some of our less profitable clients need to move along, because we need to give resource and time to our more profitable clients, the globals that need large and global support, because COVID has got some huge implications across the world. So that was fairly positive if you were a team member of the Big Four. And then about 3 weeks ago, another message came out from, for example, the managing partner of PwC put a video out that I saw, and it was, got that one wrong, chaps, we're going to have an absolute blinder. In fact, so much so, we're going to have to introduce some fairly draconian rules on holidays, because we can't have you all having holidays just when we need you most. So here's the new rules. And for example, when you get to the end of June, because they're on a calendar year holiday, if you haven't used half your holiday entitlement, you use it or lose it. If you've booked a holiday and after all you can't go to Spain because it's not possible, well, you go to Spain, but you can't cancel your holiday. At Christmas time, there are 5 days, apparently, I haven't even looked at the diary, but there are 5 days that fall into an obvious pattern of you will have your holiday on these 5 days. So keep 5 days back. And if you haven't used it all by the end of the year, there is no carry forward this time. So that caused a bit of a hoo-ha internally, of course, but it made the point very strongly, strategically, that I believe some of the best business brains in the world have said there's going to be a surge and we need to be ready for that. And then eventually, however it settles down, like everything, it will have a settling down, and we'll know what that looks like when we get there. Now, Tariq, in terms of your own discussions with accounting firms, any suggestion of preparation for the surge, or is that too early days yet?
Well, there's definitely preparation. I talk about sort of different ways of working. I mean, I was just speaking with a client the other day. We've been running a trial for them, and they've literally put all of their personal tax work to us. So 800 tax returns they're putting our way, which is something we wouldn't have expected them to do, and I don't think they expected to do it either. So I think going back to your earlier point when you were talking about clients needing advice and guidance and focusing on this higher value sort of offering, I think yes, they must be expecting it, because they're definitely looking at the compliance piece as something that somebody else should be taking care of. It's not adding lots of value in terms of our skill set. Let's focus on the advisory piece. So in short, I think right sizing, focusing on different areas. Yes, I think they're expecting to spend a lot of time on advisory type work, and I mean we've obviously experienced that even in the past few months, although maybe not all of it's been billable, in guiding clients through this this myriad of schemes that the government's put in place. So in short, yes, I think they're expecting something, or they're expecting to do something with less resources in-house, certainly more flexible.
Okay, well that's good to hear. And so the point being that each of these phases needs its own mini plan, because they are very different environments, and so just I think a little bit of planning wouldn't go amiss. A couple of questions actually I might as well nail off. Morning, Ted. The new business kit, can we white label? Absolutely. It's digital, so you can white label that to your heart's content. Just put your logo on it and pop it onto your website, have a free download, email it to clients, email it to your buddies, ask them to send it on to people, all that basic marketing, all digital of course, and start getting the word out that you want to get involved with business startups, if indeed that's what you want to do. And Steve, he makes the point, he's predicting that there's going to be a second spike. So there you go. Steve reckons that there will emerge a more lockdown. Other people are taking alternative views, and I'm willing to sit on the fence and just deal with each bridge as it comes. So now looking forward, I think the notion of working virtually is really the theme of the day. It's a short-term, long-term plan, how we are dealing with our team and our clients, and how we're going to be proactive and upsell and cross-sell, and how digitally people are onboarding new clients. And I've put a reference there with practice ignition, because that seems to be getting a lot of attention. Data feed, bank feeds from the bank, because we've got to migrate our clients where we possibly can to the cloud. I cannot see a legitimate argument, except by exception, to have clients on anything else other than real-time accounting information, the development of the virtual financial officer. We should be doing the bookkeeping, we should be doing the control accounts, we should be doing the monthly managements, the VAT, the PAYE, the payroll. It's something that we're blooming good at. And we can put trainees on the primary entry records, the cash book. We can put supervisors and managers on control accounts, and we can put partners on the top end, financial director, interpreting the figures, the what if scenarios. All of that stuff lends itself to you. None of it is available if we haven't got our clients on the cloud. So that seems to me to be a really important issue. Receipt Bank seems to be winning the land grabbing discussion right now on capturing receipts and accessing. My work papers, if you haven't looked at it, again, seems to be very popular in terms of streamlining your accounts production, your auditing processes. And if you haven't looked at that, that's probably worth 2 minutes of your, well, not probably, definitely worth 2 minutes of your time if you haven't looked at it. And something that came to light only yesterday for me, but it's been bubbling along, is CREDEC, C-R-E-D-E-C. Now they did sort of payroll direct debit facilitation over the years, but they've now come up with a wacky new way of paying suppliers without accessing bank accounts. I know it sounds completely bizarre, and it's definitely over my ahead of my pay grade. But if you are interested in Credec, I'll send you an email and I'll just give you their details. It's an eye opener, and the people who are in the know, like Kevin Salter, who's, as you know, our IT god, he thinks it's a game changer, a bit like cloud accounting, and it's a whole new era. Tariq, you sound like you're sort of a bit more IT familiar. Is that something you've come across or not yet?
I haven't, but I'm intrigued by it. In my head, I was thinking what it might be, some sort of cross, balancing off numbers in some sort of its own sort of banking system, if you like.
Yeah, it is, but you don't access the bank. I mean, the reason I know, because Ollie at our office had a go with it, and he came back and said, well, blow me, it's absolutely fantastic. It works brilliantly. So we've done it. So, and he says we love it. Kevin Salter said you'll love it. So I just think it's the next phase of enjoying what's available because you're on the cloud. It's just another example.
It's some sort of set off. So you're setting off debtors and creditors of multiple different businesses and.
No, it's not that. So Ollie sent me, by way of example, a screenshot of all our suppliers that got paid using this Credec facility. But Credec didn't, I don't know, they didn't seem to access the bank account to pay each one. It was almost like they had a system where they said, pay this list of people, and that's it. So they didn't need to go in and pay individually each person. It was like a group therapy thing. Anyway,
right, okay.
It'll mean more to you when you look at it. You're a proper accountant, and everyone's listening this morning are proper accountants, so they'll know when you see it what it means. So go and have a look at that. And so that's my work papers, and then of course developing compliance towards adding value. That's never stopped. I just think this era is going to accelerate a great deal of some of the things that were on our to-do list, like making sure we become more cloud orientated. We're just going to accelerate that and retool. Clarity HQ, another very popular business advisory software. It's not required to be on the cloud. In fact, Clarity HQ is even ahead of the cloud because that's identity. I'm going to mention it once just so you know it's very advanced. The platform on which Clarity HQ runs is blockchain. So that's the next thing. Well, I daren't even touch on that today because I don't know what I'm talking about, to be honest. But blockchain technology is the next big thing, I'm assured. So now then, I've got a question coming in. VJ, thanks VJ. He's talking about pharmacies using something similar to Credec. Okay, so it's obviously catching on this. Right, so we've got to slide 3, Tariq, and we've got 10 minutes left, or 15. We've done really well this morning. So let's see if we can...
Yeah, well done.
Some ideas here. Team loyalty, so things that seem to be helping you keep the team on board. I think at least daily meetings. Some firms are doing two meetings a day with their team. Try and involve them, please, by saying, what are you doing today, John? Tariq, tell me, what did you do yesterday? So everyone's got to chip in, otherwise they'll just be silent. And you want them to feel there's stuff happening around them, because don't forget they're working at home and they don't see with their own eyes. So to try and give people comfort that all is ticking along rather well, you get people to say, well, I did this yesterday, I'm going to be doing this today, I could do with some help on this one. I've got some free time, so if anyone needs to dump on me, feel free to ask me for some assistance because I've got some time. So there's a few pointers there. We talked about team viewer. Right, the last point, I've mentioned it a billion times, but I know it's happening more and more. So if you haven't done something about it, please do. The worst case scenario, I don't know what it is, but the most common one that starts to go all pear-shaped is somehow people are getting a password from you and or your team, and I don't know how they do it, and then it goes on for sale on the dark web, and people can buy it. And once they've got your password, things go wrong. Now, Lily, our partner, and if you've heard me, then just switch off for 2 seconds. But if you haven't heard this, then tune in. Lily is our partner on this, and they are providing a service free of charge for you to say what information is for sale on the dark web about your firm, including passwords. Now, it may have email addresses and it may have home addresses, which would be a bit surprising. But if they've got passwords on there, then basically you've got to not just as well change the password. That's, of course, immediate. But you've got to try and work out how did they get the password. And that's where Lily step in and say, we can shut the door wherever it is. Now, Tariq, this is an area I know that you're concerned about. With how many people have you got based abroad, for example, and working from home? And just a bit of flavour on this for us.
Yeah, so we've got almost 200 people working out of India, and so equally in the UK we've got a number of people here as well, all working remotely, and it is a big issue. Actually, you mentioned this dark web and information for sale. My wife, it's relevant, but she doesn't work with us, so it didn't affect our business. But she received an email which said, "I've got your password," and at the top of the email, in the subject, it said the last, I don't know, 4 letters of her password, and it was accurate. And I spoke to a IT security chap, and we couldn't work out how this password came about. And obviously they were trying to use, well, they wanted $3,000 or something like that to not divulge all sorts of things about her to the outside world. And so I spoke to this chap, and he said, "Look, go on this website, and I can share the name with you, Gordon, later. Maybe you can circulate it to people. But there is a website out there that actually collates all this information that is being sold, and you can put in your email address, and it will come up with a list of passwords that are linked to your email address if it has been hacked in some shape or form." And so, I put mine in there, my own personal one, and then there was a password from about 6 years ago on there. So wow. I don't know how they got it. So what tends to happen is there's this organizations that farm passwords. So they set up these apps on your phones or some freebie or something of that nature, and you'll go and register for this amazing thing, whatever it is. It might be a survey or what have you, and put in a password that you use for something else. And it'll appear like it's a very bona fide business, web service of some sort. And it will sit there, and it'll sit there for a few, might 6 months, a year, and then these passwords get sold on to somebody else who will then access, if they can, your email accounts, start collating information on you, and then maybe 6 months later, actually ask you for sort of, a ransom payment of some sort. So wow. These guys are very, very sophisticated. And it's very difficult to know what you can trust. I mean, there's so many things out there that you're asked to put, an email address and password in nowadays.
Wow. Okay. Well, look, I think that's been very concerning. And if you haven't done anything about it, put it on your to-do list, guys. And we certainly got this partnership with Lily, who will do it for you. I think we pay £30 or £40 a month now to them to make sure that whatever breach we ever had, and we did have a breach, just never worked out exactly where it came from at the time, but it might be as simple as you just said, Tariq. But now it's a 24/7 monitoring service, and so we feel very confident now that particular problem we've shut that door. And if you guys haven't done too much about it, then clearly I'm going to suggest you do. Right, we are really struggling here. So other things about team loyalty. Okay, my biggest concern is burnout, guys. The people working from home, we've got to just be much more mindful about their well-being. Things like sending gifts to them. A Secret Santa or the equivalent is quite a fun thing. So somebody has to send somebody in their team a little prezi, just to keep the team spirits going. quiz nights we've talked about, coffee mornings, anything along the lines of mindfulness, getting people out for exercise. Now, I've made some notes. Hang on a second. I had this managing partner group yesterday. All the ideas, and none of my ideas, all pinched the way it should be. And this was a super idea from one of our members up in Scotland. What was it now? A wellness pack. That's it. A wellness pack. So this is a little box you send them, which is a wellness pack. So I suggested my wellness pack would be, half 6 bottles of whiskey and 400 fags. That would be my wellness pack. People didn't find that very funny. I'm sure you guys didn't, but anything in moderation. But anything like that, if people have got sore backs, again, sounds a bit silly. I brought in a bar stool into my office now because I don't have a back problem. I don't want to have a back problem, but I'm sitting on a bar stool and it seems to be very comfortable. But so a number of people are saying I've got a sore back. If they've got a sore back, if you don't ask them, they might not volunteer. So have you got a sore back or a niggle? Have you got a proper office chair? If you haven't, go to the office and get your chair, or we'll get it to you, or buy one and we'll pay. Tough stuff like that needs to be dealt with. If this is going to be a slightly longer term issue than perhaps you want it to be or is. And even then, when you survey, if you haven't done so, you might survey your team, say, how are you doing? Privately confidential. Would you like to come back to the office? If so, full-time, part-time, what would you like? Get a feeling from the troops as to what they're if they don't articulate what they would like, they'll never get it. So you can't promise them just because you ask for it, you're going to get it. But if you ask them, at least you get a feeling for, and a lot of firms have done that now, and they have concluded so far it's going to be a hybrid. Some people would rather be in the office all the time, not the majority. The majority are saying, I'd actually do a bit of both. Now, Tariq, because you've got over 200 in your team, what's the feeling in your firm as to whether they want to be working from home all the time, part-time? Any general direction for the guys to get a feeling for?
Yeah, we actually done a survey because all a part of this, well-being of staff and things like that. So we've done a couple of surveys over the past 3 months to see how people are getting on, because it's a larger group. And the general, there's a few people at either end don't want to go back to the office, really need to go back to the office because I'm going crazy at home. But generally speaking, I would say by far the majority, 70%, want to do a combination of both, and approximately half their time in the office and half their time working from home. So that's what we're seeing. And I think, we have to look at it, whether that works for us as a business. That's a second thing. But I think in terms of preferences, that's certainly what people are looking to do.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
And I think what's interesting, Gordon, as a part of all of this is, obviously we have our existing staff. I'm talking as a collective with your delegates as well. We have our existing staff, but at a point in time, we will have attrition or growth needs of staff, and where do we hire those from and into? And I think we'll see a greater emphasis on the individuals wherever they are located, i.e. wherever they are in the UK or beyond that, for that matter, as opposed to within an hour's commute to the office, because what we've been able to overcome by all of this lockdown and working from home is a big trust issue that we've had with our staff. And a lot of firms have said to us, there's no way I can work with somebody that's working remotely. And in fact, as an outsourcer, it's one of the struggles we have with our clients, our prospective clients, is to help them overcome that working with somebody remotely. But I think, we've all proved it now that we can do it. And I think most of us have done it very, very well.
Absolutely. I think that's true. We do actually when we need to step up. So now, Tariq, let me just skip through a few slides and pick up the salient points on that. Was team loyalty. The client loyalty was be the bottom point there. Prepare yourself. I'm paying you $4,000 a year for an annual accounts and tax return. I think I'm going to pay you 24 grand is where it's going to be. My bookkeeper's simply not good enough to do it all. So you you can maybe even hire my bookkeeper, take her or him on board, and I'll pay you 20 grand, 24 grand to run everything for me. That is happening. And I think you should prepare yourself for it. And this is a good time to get your clients understanding that's the way forward. Don't forget videos and voice files. The 2020 website is updated, as you well know now, almost every day. The weekend is a especially busy period for my partner and the team, Ian Fletcher, because all the COVID documents seem to come out the weekend, Friday night, sod's law, to avoid the press, I think. So Monday morning is when you get some serious updates. And of course, the clientresources.co.uk is also updated automatically for you. If you haven't looked at clientresources.co.uk, please do. It is white labelable if you want to. The 2020 software will, not for a lot of money, I honestly, but we'll white label it to make it just for you. Now, the next big thing, which today is not necessarily the day, but we do now need to think about how do we engage with our potential clients and bring in the selling skills. Now, these are reminders for many of us that when you sell, the body language, recognizing that entrepreneurs are kinesthetic and not audio, therefore we should be looking about videos and engaging with Zoom and such like. But the basic principles have not changed. So people do want audits and accounts and tax returns, but they also want the virtual financial officer, they want business advice and tax advice. That hasn't changed. It's going to accelerate. So what are we doing in our sales process to anticipate that, yeah, they want an audit, but they also want advice? How are we going to bring that out? What's the process? There's the process that we've been talking about for umpteen years now. You start at the bottom left, you make sure you find out as much as you can about them, you get to know them. This is all now on Zoom or such like, but the principles haven't changed. Now we're going to do a webinar with Practice Ignition, I hope very soon, or record one, because they've got this software that's really nifty about onboarding the process and using technology. But of course, they've also had to learn how to train accountants to get involved with selling. So I'm hoping that we'll do something with them very soon. That's how you do Practice Ignition. That's how you spell it. If you haven't looked at it, definitely that's worth looking at. That'll change your life, I think. And then the next big thing that is for the here and now is cost management, bearing in mind client care. So client care is absolutely essential if the business is going to move forward. Equally is team care. So we've got wages top of the list. Now Tariq, because you are in the space that you are, and I'm thinking as a managing partner, I've got to try and keep my team on board. You mentioned several times, it's all about fee earning client ratios. And if you've got a strong client relationship, then you can build a business on the virtual financial officer, which I know is something you're very geared up to do, to support accounting firms that don't have enough bookkeepers. But what's your thinking about wage management, using yourselves or outsourcing or offshoring? I'm afraid you've only got a minute or so to highlight why this is growing and not shrinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing here is, look, we hire accountants and tax specialists and so on and so forth, but quite often they're getting bogged down by mundane compliance type issues, which, obviously they could be focusing their energies in other areas. The client relationship is key. I don't think clients perceive getting their tax return completed as a valued add. It's a necessity. They have to do it. It's a legal requirement. But if you've got time available to you to give, sort of additional guidance, support, advice, sometimes not even at a cost, because you've got a more flexible way of delivering the compliance end of it, then I think that will sort out the wage element in itself. So I think it's getting the right balance of things and getting people focused on the things that are truly adding value. As I mentioned earlier on, this is a great opportunity to use the advances of technology, cloud, to be able to have a back office anywhere in the world for that matter. And I think we're going to see an incredible increase in the pace of globalization not that it's at a slow pace as we stand, but I think it will increase further still. So I think, yeah, a lot of the costs will, yeah, I think getting a grip on costs is going to be very, very important. We don't know how long we're going to be in this version of lockdown or social distancing in the office. And we were looking at our office and we figured that, you know, in the UK, that we could only get 50% of our staff into that space, maybe even less than that. So does that mean you need bigger offices, or does it mean you need less people in the office?
Well,
so I think there's a lot of things to look at.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of efficiency things on a number of things on your list there.
So Tariq, I mean, I completely support your flexible approach, and that, I think that's the operative word. We need to just to be open-minded, whether we expand our offices or whether we, you know, whether it becomes 2 meters, becomes 1 meters, whether this thing's going to peter out and it's just going to go away. I mean, I don't know, you don't know. So flexibility, we've got to deal with one bridge as it comes. I know of firms on the subject of wages that are increasing, they've done wage increases already. So they've actually said, here's your pay rise this year. It might not be as big as it has been in previous years, but it's a sign of the right direction. I recognize the point that you said, that if we are moving into a higher tax regime, I might have had an army of clients that just did tax returns, wealthy individuals. But by being a proactive accountant, I might well approach them and say, dear Granny Smith, your £2 million investment, thinking about passing it down to the kids, can we come and talk to you about a high tax regime which is just around the corner, and is there something you want to do now which maybe you would have held back on in a previous type of business environment? Now that means that the person that used to do tax returns is going to have to step up and do tax planning, which means I'm going to have to pick the phone up to you, Tariq, and say, could you take care of my tax returns? Could you take care of my furloughing? Because all that compliance stuff needs to be done properly and correctly, because I've got people who need to step up the value chain and become more proactive. Is that something you're anticipating, Tariq?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were very much hoping for it as well, for that matter.
Yeah.
But you know, obviously, you know, existing staff aren't going to be able to do both things. They're not going to be able to do the compliance and the advisory bit if they haven't been doing it in the past. So I think there's a cost-benefit analysis that all firms should do. You know, if it takes, you know, 3 hours to do a tax return or 3 hours to give advice, which one is going to add the most value? And I think that's the question that we should all be asking ourselves. 3 hours of giving very good tax advice, you know, inheritance tax planning, whatever it might be, versus filling in a form. So,
well, look, on that subject, you'll forgive me, guys. Let me just ask the group a question. Now, I'm going to launch a poll. So just answer the question, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. Would you be interested in speaking to people like Tariq, looking forward, say, yeah, this is an area that I think could be of great interest to my firm strategically? That, you know, we're now going to evolve a business where we've got clients on the cloud, we've got good compliance, we've got good workflow, but what we don't have is enough resource to naturally reskill, retool, and move up the value chain. So yeah, a healthy conversation with someone like Tariq would be very useful. So just answer the question, guys, and we'll see if there's anyone. Oh, I see what you. Yeah. There's a lot of people showing. Wow. Some interest in there, but that's fine. I mean, I do sense, as people just stick the question, they'll be very useful. So Tariq can get in touch with you. When we go down that list of marketing, well, again, bearing in mind that this has been a torrid time and people are dying out there and nobody wants to exploit a bad situation, I also think if there are clients out there that are not being taken care of, in the example that we gave at the beginning, like firms that are over furloughing, not having enough resource. Client marketing is about satisfying an unsatisfied market uniquely well. And I sense, and I know people today and yesterday, and people I've been speaking to the last 8 weeks, we know there are clients that are not being taken care of. So in that context, marketing is an area where I think we should step up, not step down. There's a lot of debate on software, Tariq, whether people have got CCH, Digita, Iris, and now they're thinking, should I have Carbon? Should I go to Center? You know, what do I do? Do I use Practice Ignition? what's my IT stack going to look like tomorrow, and when should I decide to leap into, well, it's not the unknown, but there is a huge debate about the cost of technology versus the cloud, which it seems to be that technology generally is just crashing down in price. Tariq, any comments?
There's just so much out there. There's so much investment in it, and I think we obviously, you've mentioned some of the mainstream ones. I think we'll see more and more actually. So I think it's going to be there's almost too much to choose from. There's almost too much to choose from, and I think when you look at particularly the apps that are built around a lot of this cloud-based technology, they seem to come up very, very quickly, and then you start to use them, and then you find the challenges around them. So they're obviously not necessarily built by accountants, and so when accounting gets hold of it, they start finding the problems with it, and then there's a replacement that comes on and it comes on. But there seem to be so many to choose from, and they all look brilliant. The marketing of them is fantastic.
Absolutely, it is marketed. Yeah, some of them are really good and very tempting. So I do think that you should get in touch with people. I mean, Tariq's a good example because he sees so much technology in his day-to-day life, or Global Emphasis does. I think outsourcers are a very good source of information. Kevin Salter is a very good source of information. If you don't know where to turn, then Kevin is very much independent, like Tariq is, and say, look, this is what we're seeing. This is the general trend, and we've thrown a few names out there just because they are popular. By people who seem to know what they're doing. I can't argue too much about the landlords, because there doesn't seem to be a right or a wrong here. It's just hoping that landlords and tenants are coming up with something that allows everyone to get through the other side and say, well, thank you for your support. And now that we're out the other side, let's go back to a proper discussion about providing a good value service. But the last item there is training. And because you're 2020 members, you'll be very familiar that digital training and support is absolutely the future. And training your clients and educating your clients is the next natural thing. So clientresources.co.uk is an example of what will be happening for accountancy firms in terms of the relationship. So 2020 are, as we speak, designing clientresources.co.uk, but with another name, and one of the tabs will be C19. But we're going to build up what's my business worth, understanding accountants for non-accountants. In other words, a whole resource education hub for small accountancy firms, 2020 members, to position themselves with their clients as providing training and support beyond. We've got a slow network connection. That's probably my cue for shutting up. So if you can still hear me. Can you still hear me, Tariq?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's good.
We've overcooked it today. So in actual fact, let me just wrap up. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I was so passionately involved with all this stuff. There's so much to talk about. There's the 4 things that if you want things to happen to remind you, people need to understand, first of all, why they want to do it. They need to see with their own eyes how we're doing on a sort of real-time basis, or some sort of scorecarding. If they don't know exactly what to do, then we need to show them. And then finally, they need to be held accountable. If you get those 4 disciplines in place, even though they were working remotely, things will happen in your practice. So Tariq, over an hour ago, we said we were going to talk about that. Do you think we've covered most of it?
Yeah, I think we've done pretty well. I mean, we might have jumped ahead on a couple of points, so I think we've done pretty well. I'm happy. So,
if you want to get in touch with Tariq, guys, there's his contact details. Obviously, you know where to contact me. Tariq, I want to say thank you so much for your input this morning. It's been really helpful, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you as well. I mean, it's been great. I'm honoured to have been invited as well. And if anybody wants to have an informal chat about things that we're doing or ways in which we might be able to help them overcome current challenges or future challenges, those are my details. We'll be very, very happy to hear from you.
Fantastic. It's been great to have you this morning and get your input and insight. So thank you. And thank you guys for listening this morning. You guys take good care of yourselves. and I hope to see and certainly speak with you in the near future. Bye for now.
Bye.